also do the live stream. Hi, my name's Conor. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you for asking me to share. And it's been cool coming to this meeting and like doing the live stream. Even if I'm like not here in person, I'm behind a computer at home doing the live stream from home. So it's been good. My sobriety date, my newest sobriety date is April 18th, 2023. And you can see by these are my other sobriety dates. Somebody told me to write down my sobriety date in here. And then, this one, 11/5/14, was the first time that like I actually did have like a spiritual awakening. Like I actually did have that thing that people have been talking about that I was just like, I don't know, I'm not getting it, So I underlined it 3 times. And I was like, this is the one. So I had 2 years and then, relapsed. I had a surgery and went through all of that. But like, then it was 2/11/17. Then I went out again after 5 years. And so got a little bit over a year now. That's just to tell you a little bit about my story. I'm a chronic relapser. I consider myself like a real alcoholic, like the book describes. When people come up here and they're like, I'm a real alcoholic, like I'm a real one, like I always used to be like, man, that's like, well, what am I then? Like this fucking guy. Sorry, that's one. And I was like, well, what is a real alcoholic? And they talk about it in the book, like I'd read this thing like a few times and like the language is like hard, it's like 30s language where it's just like, I was like, back in the day we were swinging and like all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know if I can relate to this stuff, but like the more time has gone on, like Bill's story is like pretty much my story now, like all these things that happened to Bill started happening to me too, the longer I went on. And I was like, oh man, like I think like even this, like the stock market thing, like, like the big, like part of the things that led me to like relapse after 5 years was the stock market. Like I started like basically gambling, got into like the whole GameStop craze and then like made a lot of money real quick and then lost the money just as quick, because I was like such a genius with the stock market. I picked one good thing. I got lucky once, and then put like an irresponsible amount of money into it. So I made a lot of money, real quick. Then I was like, I'm so good at this. I'm just gonna quit my job. I'm just gonna do this like 24/7. And it was just like losing more money and more money. I'm like, like, and So my addiction takes many forms. I qualify for all of the programs. Whether it's Narcotics Anonymous or, AA or CA. I like CA a lot. They use the big book too. But really, any of these programs, I used to get hung up on like, well, what am I? Am I an addict? Am I an alcoholic? Am I like this or that? Do I have to say both? And I got up at a Narcotics Anonymous meeting and I said like, well, I'm an alcoholic and an addict. And then like somebody after the meeting was like, oh, you one of those andas. And I was like, what's an and? Oh, so I can't say it. I'm like, well, then what am I? But really, it's just the thing, whatever it is, the thing that ruins your life, the thing that's going to kill you. So, I grew up, I was born in London, moved to New York City, and grew up in Bethesda, Maryland, like slightly upper middle class, pretty privileged place with white picket fences and like, SUVs in the driveways and like all that stuff. And went to really good public school. And just like got in with like the hippie kind of smoking weed in high school kind of crowd, started smoking weed all the time. Like it was not too long before I was smoking weed all day, every day. And I knew even back then when I was like 16, I was like, this might become a problem for me. But it never really, and you know, if like pot's your thing too, like, you know, bless you, because you're gonna get a lot of shit for it in these rooms. But it's no more valid than any other thing that you may have. So, you know, I thought that was my main problem, because like I would do that, and then I got into like ecstasy, like in the late 90s, and like the underground raves and everything. I was just like, you know, one of those, like, you know, I never was, I didn't think I was popular enough to be able to like pull off Jinkos and like all that stuff, you know, like, you know, but like, you know, had my own pacifier and shit for like, you know, chilling and like going to like raves and stuff, and just like, and like I learned how to do this, you know, and I was just like, you know, I was like doing all that shit, and yeah, and I was just like, oh man, it's like, yeah, this scene. I'm like, nah, it's probably the drugs. And then like it was like real like spiritual with like mushrooms and like acid, and just like, you know, seeking something, you know. I think that's, you know, a lot of people get into drugs or alcohol in different ways. Like there's like the social element, but mine was like, you know, when it came to like pot and psychedelics, I was really like looking for something, I think, greater than myself. I didn't grow up religious. My parents were not religious. My dad, very anti. My mom, later in life, like she's Benedictine. So like she's like hippie Christian, kind of, I guess is the way to describe her. You know, like she was a hippie in the 60s. My dad was too. Both journalists, both worked for National Public Radio. When I was 8 years old, my father was captured in the Gulf War, the first one, 1992, by the Iraqi Republican Guard in Basra. And we just like, we were told that he was missing after like a firefight where Americans were killed. So it was like, you know, I had to go to therapy to remember some of that stuff, because I was only 8, but it was just like, I think that formed a lot of my kind of anxious disposition and kind of like standoffishness, you know, with people to this day. But, you know, that didn't make me an alcoholic. I believe that did not make me an alcoholic. I know people that had like horrible like abuse and like upbringings and stuff. They didn't become alcoholic. So I was like, you know, I'd hear stories from the podium of like, you know, like I was like this and like that, and I was like, you know, I did it, like all these things happened, and like, you know, that's, you know, I'm an alcoholic. And it's like, I'm like, well, I must not be one, because, you know, I didn't really feel that different as a kid, you know. Sometimes I would hear that, like, always felt different than everybody. I'm like, I don't know what an alcoholic really is, you know. And now I'm even more confused. I'd be going to these meetings, people talking about all these things, and I'm like, well, if that's an alcoholic, I don't know what I am, you know. I got a serious problem, you know. I thought I was going crazy, like in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Like first I went to like, you know, I got 2 DUIs. So after my second DUI, my dad got involved. He's like, maybe the first one's a mistake. After you get your second one, it's like, yeah, there's probably something there. So he suggested I go to rehab, and you know, my parents like shelled out like a lot of money for Promises. I went to Promises, which was like really nice. If I won the lottery, I'd probably like go there preemptively, just to like hang out for a little bit, because it was great. I mean, like nothing against them, but like, you know, they had like horse therapy and like, you know, like acupuncture and like guided therapy and like all these like amazing things that like I just like anyway, you know. I didn't want anything 12-step based, because like they tried sending me that, and I was like, oh, this is not. I was like, I saw like the word God on there, and I had this idea of what that meant, and I was just like, this is not for me. You know, this is a cult. I don't want anything to. I'm like, look at the steps and be like, well, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, okay, fine. Like 1, yeah, sure. And then I'm like, dumb, 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 dumb. 4 seems okay, sure, whatever. Dumb, 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 dumb. 9 made directly. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, it's probably like good for anybody, right? Make amends to. And then like, okay, yeah, 10. That's dumb and dumb. But that was like just looking at it. I was just like, I'm too smart for this stuff, which is a lot of my problem. And so yeah, I thought I was too smart for this. I thought I was like, it's just like a cop out, and like, I think maybe like the echoes of like my father like ringing in me, just like, just man up. Like, why can't you stop? Why don't you just stop? Like, why don't you just stop? And then sometimes like after, like rehab, I stayed sober for maybe like 5 months, relapsed. Like I got like 1 6-month chip all the way from 2011 until 2014, when then I got 2 years. And it was just like 30 days, 60 days, newcomer, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 6 months. Holy shit. But by 6 months, I was doing this. I was just like, got my 6-month chip, and it was just like bleeding in my hand. I'm like, I made it. Like, this is it. Like, and I'm like hanging on to that chip like it's the thing that's going to keep me sober. And I'm like, I was lost, I was really lost. And then, I ended up like, I went from promises to like, my parents, they went to Al-Anon, and, that was the end. They cut me off, which was the best thing that like they could have done for me. It was the best, absolutely best thing that they could have done for me. Like, they cut me off, like they're not going to pay for like motels or whatever, like nothing, so I was homeless. So I was like, find myself like sleeping behind a dumpster, like breaking into somebody's garage to kind of like get out of the rain. It was like a particularly rainy time in LA for some reason. And just like, I'd sleep next to a dumpster, and then like somebody be like, oh, you can't sleep here. You got to go somewhere else. And I'm like, I'm getting kicked out of a dumpster? I mean, like that's, yeah, it was like, like you're like in a bad spot. But something that like, I ended up in Claire Foundation, which I think is like a lot like Fred Brown, like it's like straight from jail to a lot of people come, I don't know. But it was that kind of place where I was just like suddenly like, instead of like horse therapy and stuff, I was in like a little room like maybe this size with like 25 other dudes, like some of them with like swastika tattoos and like people just out of prison and stuff. And I'm like, hey, how's it going? And I'm like, okay. But man, I was willing to, I was homeless. I was willing to do anything. So I did that. I ended up back in the sober living they had back there. I relapsed there, and then it got really bad. I was homeless again, and I wanted to go back into Claire, and like that's the second time I got into Claire is when I met my first sponsor, who was in Claire as a patient. But like the first sponsor that like actually like he had like 5, 6, 7 years before, and then he had just relapsed. So he was like, coming down off heroin. Like he was like coming down off heroin, but like he did the weirdest thing, and I was really judging him for it for like the first couple of weeks. He was like taking guys through the book because like, by his own admission, it was like that was the thing that like he stopped doing, He had a spiritual awakening. He was doing the deal. Like he was taking guys through the book, and then like kind of like stopped doing it. Things, the life got too big or whatever it was. And, he just like picked up where he left off. He was like, I got to start doing this again, And I was like, who is this guy that has less time than me, probably like a day or whatever. Taking these guys, like doing a book study with like people, like this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But then like I ended up taking the book study, and he like took me through the book, and turns out like his sponsor, like he had like a real close lineage to Dr. Bob. It was like he was like two removed from Dr. Bob, something like that. Which doesn't really matter. I mean, but at the same time, it was like the message that was in the book. It was like the message that AA was, which is something that like just got lost when I was in the rooms. Like I hear all these like different things, and I'm like, what's going on? I was going like, insane in the rooms because like people were telling me just to like, just don't drink, just don't pick up, and you won't get drunk. And I'm like, but that's the problem. I can't just do that. That's why I'm here. Like I can't just not drink or use no matter what. That's literally the problem. That's also literally the first thing I tried. Was not doing it. Couldn't not do it. So that's why I'm here. How do I not do it? Just don't do it. I'm like, well, obviously, but like, okay. Then I was going crazy. I was like, I started getting like suicidal because I was just like, I obviously have this thing that like, even these people don't know what the hell they're talking about. And then like, he brought me through the book, and like, one thing is like, what's an alcoholic? What does the powerless over alcohol and lives have become unmanageable thing actually mean? Well, I'm powerless over alcohol, the allergy, that the book describes, abnormal reaction. With alcohol, it's what they say, it's like 10% of us, 8% of us, something like that. You put alcohol in my system, I can't stop. I'll just keep on doing it, and I built that up over time. That was something that like, I started like social, but then where I end up is like alone in my room, drinking till I pass out, waking up, drinking till I pass out, coming to, drinking till I pass out, and that was it. That was my life, Try to go to work. Sometimes like, but then I got to a point where I was like, I couldn't work without shaking, couldn't work without shaking, so I'd have to have some drinks at work. Sometimes I had a couple more than I intended to. And, people are like, dude, you smell like you're drunk. I'm like, no, I'm fine. I had 6. I'm good. This is where I'm at. Like, I'm good. If I had any less or more of this, I'd be bad. You don't want me to have less than this. You don't want me to have more than this. Trust me, But that's the thing, is like, you can't, like, I'm unable to control this, no matter what I do. I found out pretty quick that like the amount that I have is the amount that I'll drink. So I started buying like those airplane bottles, which are just more expensive if you just keep drinking that way. I buy like 2 at a time, and like take 2 of them and then like throw them away, and I'm like, I'm good. And then you got to break out the gum and like make yourself like just saturate yourself with cigarette smoke. So like you just, and then, I liked whiskey and stuff, but I was like, oh, so whiskey smells more, then okay, I'll just drink vodka then. And then, it got to a point of like, it was just bad. And then it got really bad. It just kept on getting worse. One of the things my sponsor says is that like the train makes all the same stops if you're an alcoholic or an addict. And that's kind of like why how I said before, I relate more and more to Bill's story, because like his train, like you could see its progression. Like it's like, oh, that people killing themselves during the financial crisis, of the 20 crash. It's like, well, that's gross. I'm just gonna drink. I'll just drink. That's fine. But then he's like, should I kill myself? No, not now. And then later he's just like, he says like he's bringing like a mattress to the bot so he doesn't drown. For what I thought for the longest time, what he meant by that was that he put it like down and he was still sleeping on the second floor or whatever, so that if he jumped out, he would just bounce off the mattress. I'm like, that's really dumb, Bill. But he was actually just like sleeping down there. Anyway, but I related more and more to that. It was just like it's like it's like fun with problems, then more problems. The problems get worse and worse and worse. Then it's like seriously like you don't know which one's gonna kill you. I've almost died from alcohol withdrawal and alcohol poisoning a few times. One time I got to the ER, I was going to check myself into. It was Brotman, but they have a detox program there called Miracles, and I've been in the detox there many times to detox off alcohol. But like, I got there and they took my like pulse and like blood pressure. They were like, you got to go to the ER right now. And I was like, why? And it's like, you're gonna have a heart attack. Like you need to go to the ER right now. We can't accept you into detox. And they were like, when was your last drink? And I was like 5 hours ago. They're like, you should have drank on the way here. But I was like, well, I'm trying not to. But that's how it goes with alcohol. Is like alcohol withdrawal can kill you. And this last time when I went out, it was like 0.47 was my blood alcohol, which is normally dead for most people. I was like, okay. I mean, I was insane, but like, it didn't kill me. I don't know if I get to a 0.5 maybe, but that's the progression. Is that like if I started drinking now, you better call the cops like now so they have a head start. Like I'm gonna get like unruly. Like I remember like when I was doing the whole motel, like when I had money for a motel, I was doing like these motels, like it was like $60 for like a night or whatever, $50 for a night. I go there and then like this one place that I'd been many times, I went there and I was like, yeah, I'll get a night. And he's like, oh, you. And I was like, it's me. Can I get a night? And he's like, no, you're banned. And I was like, why am I banned? He's like, well, there was like, the cops came, you were naked and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I don't remember it, but it makes sense. Like I didn't deny it. I was just like, probably. That was probably me. One thing I learned out there is that like, if you need a place to stay, this is bad advice. If you need a place to stay and you're homeless, you just call the cops to tell them you're going to kill yourself, and they'll come get you. They'll come get you. They'll put you in a mental institution, and I'm like, you get like 24 hours, like minimum, 72 hours, maybe 12 days. If you're lucky, if you keep on talking that talk, they'll give you 12 days. And like I was the kind of person I'd go in there, and like I got to the point where all I wanted to do was just be unconscious. I was like, I just want to be unconscious. I don't want to experience this life anymore. I'm too much of a coward to like actually kill myself. I want to. I really hope that like a meteor falls out of the sky and just like does it, or like somebody like hits me with their car or something. But like the act of doing it was like, it just like I couldn't end up doing it. So I was in a real tough place. They in the Vision for You, they talk about that place. And this is how I was for a long time. A vision for you, it's like we always like, hear the last part of a vision for you, but like there's pretty dark in a vision for you. Because it's like, here it's like, now and then a serious drinker being dry at the moment says, I don't miss it at all. I feel better. I work better. Having a better time. I'm doing good. I just got a job. It's good. It's good. Like I'm doing fine. As ex-problem drinkers, we smile at such a sally. We know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. He fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take half a dozen drinks and get away with them. He will presently try the old game again. For he isn't happy about his sobriety. He cannot picture a life without alcohol. Someday, which is the place that I got, and this is true, it's like the train makes all the same stops. Keep on going, it'll happen. We'll be unable to imagine life either with alcohol or without it. Then he will know loneliness loneliness such as few do. He will be at the jumping off place. He will wish for the end. This happened to me. Where I was like, well, I can't drink. I can't not drink. 5 minutes. And so this guy, I'm taking people through the book. He took me through line by line. Really like had a book study, I was like, I had read this book 100 times. Like, how is this going to help me? I don't understand. I've read this book. I know how to read. I'm not an idiot, I'm like, what is this? What? And then like you go line by line, like sort of explaining like how the book is the steps. Like the first 4 chapters are step 1 and 2. First step is first 3 chapters, and then we agnostics step 2, and then it's like how it works. 4, 5, 6. It gets real quick. And then working with others, and like, honestly, at that time, like I had this experience, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Like I believed him. I believed my own story. I really had that internal experience of just like, oh my God, like I think this could actually work. I think this could actually work. And that it was in a room. I thought this experience was going to happen to me on a mountain with like a rainbow and like a unicorn and like a bird like flying and like landing on my finger, and it's like, it's everything's gonna work out. It's gonna be okay. But it was in a room like this with like like linoleum and like these lights, and this is not linoleum. This is actually nicer, but there's a room like this where it's like the zzz, and then people going crazy in the other room, and I was like, oh my God, like I had a spiritual experience in that room, and I realized that like this is where it comes from. It's not like, not here. It's not what people say. It's like, it's this unexpected internal resource where it comes from. That's not me. It's a part of me, but it's not me. And then, of course, I was compelled to make a decision. What am I going to do? I'm going to keep on doing this dance until like I just like die for some reason. I fall down, somehow hit my head on something, or I drink myself to death. I get hit by whatever it is. Or am I going to do something about this, even if I don't necessarily think it's like understand why it works? And the understanding why is like not important. Why does it work? I don't know. It just does, These aren't the first guys to think of something like this, This is like, you meet those people that are just like so naturally inclined to be spiritual. Like they're just like really good people. I had a friend who was a Mormon, like in high school, and he just like he was always in a good mood, and like he had game night with the family and stuff like that. I'm just like, I want to be like that, I mean, I don't jive so much with the Mormonism, but like I want to be like that, like that guy's seems like he's got everything figured out. But it was the things that he was doing. It wasn't the things that like he necessarily believed in, whatever the details of whatever God or whatever religion you follow, like that's personal, Of course it's personal with everybody, but it's like, that's not necessarily what's important. It's like, what are you doing in service of that? Are you helping people? Are you lying? Are you in the room like still being kind of like a piece of shit? I know people that have like years of sobriety and like they're not necessarily doing the right things. I think steps 2 through 12 are for anybody. This spiritual malady that causes me to go back to drinking. Spiritual malady is not something unique to alcoholics. I think you can see that daily on the street. Spiritual malady is just like the cost of being a human being. Everybody has it. Everybody has spiritual malady. Everybody has that disconnect of like, it's me versus the world or whatever it is. We just have an extra little thing called alcoholism where it's like, if I can't get the spiritual malady fixed, I'm going to drink, even if I don't want to. That's the fucked up part. Even if I don't want to. And then I'm going to die because of that. Other people have like, you have like CEOs of like Fortune 500 companies, like have spiritual malady, like, like they go for money and power and that kind of thing. Is that going to kill them? Probably not. Seems to be working out. Are they necessarily the happiest people in the world? Probably not. They're probably miserable, most of the time. But they don't have to fix their spiritual malady. We have to do it. It's good for anybody to fix their spirituality. It's good for anybody to connect that way. But like, the problem is like, if we don't fix ours, the thing that we have to deal with it is going to kill us. Like, it will kill us. So that's my time. Man, I hope I said something that people can relate to. I'm good. Go? Okay. Yeah, for the record, the only thing that definition of an alcoholic by the by the Big Book standards is right in the beginning of We Agnostics. In the preceding chapters, you've learned something of alcoholism. We hope that we made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. If, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking, you have little control of the amount you take, you're probably an alcoholic. That's it. It's not all this other stuff. That's it. It's like, I've got the allergy. I can't stop when I start. When I do stop, some insane reason drives me back. And I pick it up. I've been like walking to the liquor store like this. Like one time when I told you about in Claire where I relapsed there, I was walking to the liquor store down the street and I was like, I can't fucking do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I would turn around, I would walk back to Claire. Turn around, start walking back to the liquor store. I can't do it. I can't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't you do it. Like in my head. Don't do it. I'd walk in the liquor store. I'd be like, like bottle of the biggest, cheapest drink you have, get that and then be like, you bought it, but you don't have to drink it. You don't have to even open it. You can just throw it away. There's a trash can right there. Throw it away. Throw it away. What are you doing? Put it in my backpack, walk back to Claire. Like, you don't have to drink it. You haven't drank it yet. Open it, go to the bathroom, open the thing up. I'm like, just pour it down the drain right now. Pour it down the drain. You don't have to do this shit. Like, you don't do it. And boom, it's crazy. Yeah. Or like, I mean, like all these other drugs too, like cocaine, the same thing. I throw it out my window, be like, done with that. I'll be right back. I was in Boston. I threw it out the window and it went down like, we just had a huge snowstorm. I went down there and I'm like, yep, I went back down. I'm like, like, there it is, God. I wouldn't, if I was going to take out $200 that night, I wouldn't have taken out 20 at a time. Why am I paying all those, like $1.50 each time to take out $20 when I could have spent $1.50? If I was going to spend $200 that night, I would have just taken out $200. But I know, I kept on walking back to the ATM, taking $20 out. That's it. This is the last one. I'm going back and like, okay, for real though, this is the last one. So it's like whether like and that's what, when they say hopeless alcoholic, William Silkworth talks about what he means by that. And his definition of hopeless is somebody that wants to stop but can't. And that's just like in a whole, like, how do you fight against that? Well, it's like the spirituality, If you clear out your past of like all the stuff you still think about, like a resentment you have towards like your third grade teacher about like something, it's like, why is that still in there? Why? Why am I still, like the definition of resentment is to think, to feel again, again, sentiment, like sentiment, to feel again. Why, like animals have this thing figured out. Like, you know, when the horses do that, I learned this in horse therapy. When horses get like anxious, you see them go like this, and then they're done. Like 20 years later, just being like, oh, that one time that human like kicked the dirt in a weird way. Fuck that, like they deal with it like right there and then and there, and they don't feel it again, But we gotta like write the stuff out and like oh, Anyway, I've said a lot. Hopefully, related to somebody, I've got two choices in this life. I mean, I don't know how much of a choice there is, since but it's like I'm gonna die an alcoholic death, or I'm gonna die sober, and that's what I got. And these things exist at the same time. I've learned from all my relapses that you never got this thing. It's never there. Like I recover from a hopeless state of mind and body. Like I don't like to think that like, people talk about like, oh, like 20 years sober. It's like, oh, my alcoholic thinking. I'm like, no, you're an asshole. Your alcoholic what are you talking about alcoholic thinking? Like you're just being an asshole. Stop being an asshole. Write about that shit so you're not an asshole anymore. Like, what is the alcohol? Alcoholic thinking is like, I should get a drink right now. That's not, all these like things get like, it's like, it's pretty simple, it's like, being a good person is work, Like some people it's not work. For us, it's work. It's like the only easy thing about this program is they said it in the book. They say it in the book. I don't know what page it's on exactly, but it's it's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action. That's easy. This stuff is like simple. It's like simple, 12 steps, not like 37 steps, like 12, only 12. And it's hard. And it says like God does not make too hard terms for those who earnestly seek him. It doesn't say he makes easy terms for people that seek him. Like it's very like clear with that language that he uses. Like it's not too hard. It's going to be hard though, but not too hard. You can do it. And we all can do it. It's available for everybody. Hope you have that experience. I really do. To be here is grace. Most people end up here. Most people do not end up here in a rehab or in a facility. Most people that have our problem never find a place like this. It's really a grace. People talk about pink cloud, kind of like try to put down the newcomer or whatever it is. It's like, oh, you're in that pink cloud. It's like, no, that's your window of opportunity, where you feel good without having to do that much, So you start doing the things in that window while you're still desperate, but also while like you're in a good mood about this whole thing. Like, oh, I just got a job, or like, I feel better, obviously, because I'm not fucking drinking and using every day. But like, when in that moment is like, that's the time to get into the steps, whether you do it through this way or you do it another way, it's the same steps. First step is changed, or the first, over blank, yeah. Anyway, I'll stop talking now. I can blab forever. So, thanks.